Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania is hard evidence that as a kid, I was dumb and had bad opinions. Growing up as a Sega kid, I'd sometimes see II pop up in games like Sonic Riders, and every time I managed to get a look at his own games in action, I'd find no appeal in them. Something about the high skill ceiling and completely abstracted level designs held no appeal for me. I'd look at them and always wondered why people enjoyed these weird, frustrating looking games, and also resigned myself to figuring that the series just wasn't for me and to let it be for those who it was for. But that belief was challenged somewhat after I tried Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD last year, because I'm the type of shill that will buy your game when the RGG Studios logo gets placed on it, apparently. And while I found the first few worlds kind of interesting, all in all it was the type of game I played and immediately forgot. But it did plant the seeds of curiosity in my mind, and with the announcement of Banana Mania earlier this year, I decided I'd finally try the first two games out to get a reference point after watching my buddy Justin play the second one over Discord. To put it simply, I fell in love pretty much immediately. I put Super Monkey Ball 2 down a few worlds in so that I could go into this release fresher than a bunch of licensed bananas. With Sega itself generously providing a PS5 copy of this game and its launch DLC packs to the channel for free, what did I have to lose? It turns out the answer to that question was $40 because it didn't take me long to know for sure that I'd want a physical copy for my own game collection. I won't drag this out for the whole video. Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania is a fantastic adaptation of the first two games in the series, placing every level from those two games, as well as the additional levels from Super Monkey Ball Deluxe, into one concise, flashy, snappy package. It feels great to play, it's incredibly visually appealing, and while I found myself resonating more with the original soundtrack, the new music composed for this release is still quite nice. Any complaints and nitpicks I have are incredibly minor. I don't think Banana Mania outright replaces the original games, but it sure comes close. This is one hell of a package, and if you have even an inkling of interest in the series, it's a must-buy. As it turns out, all the things that turned me away from Monkey Ball as a kid are the reasons I found it immensely addictive to experience as an adult. If you're unaware, the aim of the game here is quite simple. You manipulate the stages in the game with your analog stick to use the underlying game physics to maneuver your monkey to the goal in each level, collecting bananas along the way that have a use we'll mention later. Each stage tasks you with reaching the goal in a set time limit, usually 60 seconds, and a ton of the fun here comes from classic arcade ethos. Learn the weird controls, learn the weird levels, and then learn how to break the game over your knee to do it faster and faster on subsequent playthroughs. You have some absolutely simple courses here to help you get used to the game feel, but there are many stages in this game that you can't help but look at for just a few seconds and think, how the hell did they expect anyone to work their way through this mess? Sometimes the abstracted level designs feel like they came from the devil himself, but it is so rewarding to beat your head against the wall until you persevere and make it through. Playing Super Monkey Ball 2, especially for the first time, was almost an awakening of sorts for me. It just hooked directly into my brain and put me into a zen state that I could never have imagined having as that dumb, stupid kid. That feeling stuck even when I'd get stuck. Time would just melt away without me even realizing it as I tried again and again and again to beat tougher levels. Banana Mania bottles most of that incredible essence, faithfully carrying over all 300 or so levels from Super Monkey Ball 2, and Super Monkey Ball Deluxe, like I said. It only comes a few steps short of outright replacing the original games due to having different gameplay physics, among a smattering of absolutely minor nitpicks in my opinion. Even for a complete newcomer like me, that change was apparent. The acceleration is tuned to make you go faster, well, faster, and there's a certain adjusted X factor here that I found resulted in less of the absolute chaos that could ensue in the original titles. I want to also clarify that I don't think this is a bad thing. In an ideal world, it would be a 1-to-1 copy, but what is here is still absolutely fun to engage with on its own terms, and honestly, most people may not even notice who haven't played the originals recently to compare. It reminds me of the debacle around the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, where core fans incredibly familiar with the original experience will immediately feel a difference, but for most people it's the fun levels they remember with a new coat of paint. And again, I don't point any of this out to take away from Banana Mania, but more so to inform those core fans who are going to want to know how this compares. And while I'm here mentioning my minor quibbles, it is unfortunate that only the core Monkey cast can go into the myriad of party games available. Banana Mania brings an incredible roster, featuring monkeys I didn't even know existed, Sonic, Tails, Beat from Jet Set Radio, Kiryu from Yakuza, and even 3 pieces of Sega hardware. It's fantastic. The monkeys also have alternate costumes, and you can even pay $5 for retro character models of most of the monkeys, but I find it quite puzzling that you can pay that $5 and then not utilize those skins in the party games. Now that said, Banana Mania does have character customization options for those monkeys, and all the clothes you can equip do seem to carry over into those, which is at least something. I dressed my II up in pink with a Sega shirt. He's quite dapper. My other complaint. Super Monkey Ball 2's story is here, technically, but honestly it may as well not be. When going through the story mode, you get these little cutscenes where the plot of that game is approximated here with still images and no dialogue. Then, as the conflict arises, the camera zooms out and it turns out the monkeys were watching themselves on TV and then bust into action to go solve the conflict that their TV selves are experiencing. These scenes are very short and are mostly just head scratchers in my opinion. I appreciate the thought, but it may have been better to just not bother with them if this is what they were going to give. And I'm not going to sit here and say that those original cutscenes made any amount of sense in their own right, but the absolute insanity of how stupid they were gave them so much charm that this new style just feels absolutely hollow by comparison. But again, that's something that really doesn't matter at all. It just gives another perk to going back to the original versions if you do enjoy Banana Mania. And I'm sure newcomers who do that will appreciate finding out why the monkeys all end up inside of a whale. Man, Super Monkey Ball 2 is awesome. So I've mentioned quite a few extras here, so let's just actually list everything out. All of the old stages are here. Monkey Ball 2's story stages can be tackled in a row. There are practice modes and challenge modes for both games levels as well. The deluxe stages are unlockable as well and reside in their own little section. And additionally, some stages of those were modified to be a bit easier, but in a refreshing move, you can unlock an optional mode that puts all of the original stages together in its own gauntlet challenge. And trust me, after playing some of those, I see why they made them easier, because, oh... There's a golden banana mode that tasks you with collecting each banana in a set of stages versus simply reaching the goal, and there's a dark banana mode that asks you to avoid them completely. Touching any of them will net you a game over on that level. There's also a reverse mode that asks you to work through select stages backward, which immediately proves itself as a great idea. You can unlock the maligned jump feature from later entries in the series to see how it breaks these games as levels, and from there unlock a ton of different clothing options and photo mode filters in the points shop. Beating any level gives you points, and there are over 700 challenges to complete in-game that all give you additional points to spend. And like I alluded to earlier, collecting bananas also gives you points to use in the shop. But if you want to unlock everything by just going through Monkey Ball 2's story levels over and over, kind of like I want to do, that's totally a valid option too. It feels fun to check back into the shop every so often to unlock some new things to tinker with, so I'm glad this is a thing. Points also help paint a path to Banana Mania's fantastic accessibility features. For 2,000 points, you can mark a particularly challenging level you're stuck on as complete and just move on to the next level if you want. It doesn't give you a clear time or bonus, but if you just want to play more stages and come back to problem levels later, it's a great option. Additionally, you can enable a helper mode, which lets you hold down the shoulder button to slow down time, and adjusting camera sensitivity can help a lot in specific spots on specific stages. Oh, yeah, Banana Mania also introduces full camera control, which is awesome for levels like this one, and again, totally optional if you want to play it the original way. There's also Gyro Controller options, at least on PlayStation and Switch. I'm unsure about other platforms. Where I'm sure Banana Mania will flourish, though, is in its online leaderboards with time attack modes for the main game levels, as well as score attack leaderboards for some of the party games. I'm going to enjoy being 15th in the world here with my mediocre time for as long as I can. And of course, there are 12 of those party games in general in Banana Mania to play against computer AI or your friends. To avoid reading them off, I'll show them here, but I'll say that due to the aforementioned physics change, Monkey Target plays differently. Not badly, just differently. Some friends who also have the game early, like my buddy Bladeblur, told me that it just feels off compared to what they're used to. And I know that Monkey Target is a big deal for a lot of old school fans, so while I can't personally quantify what's different, I wanted to at least mention it to let you know to look into it. As for me, I'll be spending most of my time in Monkey Billiards anyway. I wonder if any of those monkeys are cognizant of the fact that smaller versions of them are playing billiards in front of them. As usual in life, best not to think too much. If it sounds like I've just rattled off a ton of side content there, well, I have. Banana Mania has an absurd amount of extra things to fiddle with. It would have had plenty to experience if it was just content to bring back all of the original stages, but the myriad of side content and modes to dabble in help make this an exceptional game to dedicate yourself to and master. It's safe to say that there are probably dozens of hours of game here if you want to do it all, and believe me, that Super Monkey Ball isn't the type of game where you'll have had your fill even when you've checked off every box. These levels are just too fun to leave alone. I've found myself thinking about them when I've been away from them, and always wanting to go back just to feel that flow state once more. Sega also passed along Lost Judgment to me a bit before this game, and while playing that game for review has been like Christmas for me, I hated to have to split my time because the allure of the monkey was so strong. And if you know how much I love Yakuza games, the fact that I wanted to put it down to play anything else before beating its story should speak volumes to how addictive Banana Mania is. I think the main thing that hurts this game is partitioning off features any other remake would just have in the base package to sell back as DLC. The Spyro remakes included the original soundtracks and the original character model, not to comment on how accurate or not that model may have been, but the practice here is just a bummer. I understand the current game market is one that makes Banana Mania almost need to be priced at $40, but when most of the features people are going to want are just going to be sold separately for a total of $20 anyway, you might as well man up and launch the game at $60 and just include those options on the disc to begin with. And I know that's awkward for me to say because I did get all of the launch DLC for free with my code, as it turns out. But it doesn't change my mind that I don't like this practice, and they should have just included this stuff in the base game. The game would absolutely be worth that full $60 regardless, as it is evident from every angle that this is a remake imbued with care and passion by people who love old school Super Monkey Ball for people who love old school Super Monkey Ball. If you've ever been curious but hesitant and are in need of that old school Sega charm, jump in here, you won't regret it. I can say with confidence that Banana Mania has already been some of the most fun I've had with the game all year, and I'm so excited to stop talking about it so I can go back to playing it more. And on that note, I'm going to go do just that. Thanks for stopping by, and if you love the series or wind up trying Banana Mania out down the road, be sure to let me know how you feel about this game. And as ever, a major thanks to all of my patrons on Patreon, and a big thank you to Adrian, Buckles Chucklo, Calico Plus, Goldstorm07, Harry, James Boss, Jeet, Joey, Lewis Jones, Moki, Patrick Thompson, Svendelica, That Trav Guy, The Crazy Even, The Legend of Groose, and Wolf Chaos On.